I thought I'd just break the mold and not start with an ATM today. Ooh. So let's start with some FI practice. Warm your hands up. Unless there's any questions from yesterday or last week or whenever. Yes. I'll tell you.
I was taken with the way that Mother Christ seems to allow this voice where you can be soothed, your nervous system soothed, but you're actually alert, you're alert.
Yes. I can repeat it too if you want.
I was thinking of the way that your nervous system, when you get to this state of equipoise, is soothed but not doped. You're still alert. And I was wondering about the way that it will allow possibly that sort of soft focus on something that might be quite frightful, you know, that we mostly switch off from.
Yeah.
Like death or climate change or, you know, other things, pain. And, you know, I mean, it's occurring to me, it must have occurred to lots of other people, almost like a kind of way to non-dualism, to stand in the face of something that's you can't withstand, but yet be able to.
Yeah. I think this is a really important point. I'm echoing. I'll try and adjust first. And why we kind of, you know, the fight or flight is such an animal kind of response, because there is a middle way, you know, sorry to quote other great traditions. And you talk to people who have been in a life-threatening situation, and they do, sometimes people spontaneously go into this kind of calm, you know, this kind of zone, as it were, you know, which is not fight or flight, it's something else. And, you know, it has that quality where they can respond and there is time. And it's, I think all of us probably have had that experience, you know, outside of Feldenkrais, but I think it's, I think your point is well made.
So to me, constructing this conceit, as you like to say, about a kind of embodied meditation.
Yes.
Very physical.
Yes.
State of
that
is analogous to what happens in your brain with meditation, I think.
Yes. And what I really appreciate about what he did for us, you know, I sound a bit like a disciple, but he did. He gave us signposts to find it. Whereas other traditions, you kind of have to sit there and wait for it or whatever, you know, or, you know, go into a cave or do something extreme. But he actually gave us very somatic, you know, it's a bit like the witch in the forest, gave us breadcrumbs that we can actually keep finding this state, and the more we find it, the better we are at finding it. And then acting out of that state, which doesn't mean, like, he was a fighter as well. I mean, he could ramp up and fight. I mean, you probably read some of his stuff. I mean, a bit scary, you know, and he kind of makes allusions every now and again to what he got up to as a young man, and you go, wow, you know, it's pretty hardcore. But so he wasn't like he floated around in some, you know, flow state all the time either. But and he got this from judo in many ways, you know, that state of fighting. And his, you know, the people that he really reveres are those martial artists who act out of this kind of zone, as it were. Good.
One more question.
Yeah.
You talked about those brain images.
Yes.
And I wondered if you might show us some.
Sure. They're so beautiful. They're really beautiful. Really beautiful. Yes. I've got my laptop today. I'll see if I can fire it up. See if I've got it on my laptop. It's on my hard drive in the apartment, but I'll bring them. Yep. Any other questions? Yep. All right. Let's get to work. So we'll just use this. And we're going to do some simple and clarifying things. So we've got your list of why on earth we might choose to ask someone to lie in prone. And you quite rightly said access to the spine, which we explored earlier last week. Remember, you felt along the gutters of the spine, just feeling the muscle tonus and comparing one side to the other and one segment to another. Remember that? Yes. And then with Fran, you explored the connection of the legs to the pelvis and felt which way the legs wanted to turn in or out and how well or where that connected to the pelvis. And then if the pelvis started to turn, what started to turn above the pelvis. Right? I'm doing this, you can, my hands are telling you what you did. I can show you. Does someone want to lie on the table? Sure. I've got a thing about people's face being on vinyl. I personally don't like my face on vinyl. So have you got a towel that you'd like to put under your delicate face? Do we have a training towel that we could put under Glenn's delicate face? It's just one, you know, we've all got our little things. This is my thing. I like faces to have something not vinyl to lie on. You can have your head up this end and your face down. Best side up. Yeah. Okay, so to recap, I'll leave Glenn, I'll assume that he's comfortable, because actually the very first thing we did was explored how to find comfort on the stomach. And actually there's been a little bit of there's quite a bit of a flavour of that in the ATMs at the moment, with the head turning and the pelvis twisting. So it kind of fits in with that. So let's assume that Glenn has chosen his comfortable position. He's got one arm up, his head's turned to the left. His legs, I don't think he's put his legs for comfort for his face, which some people do. I think he's put his legs how they are, because you see this one's turned out more than this one. And that might be Glenn, I don't know. So we'll just assume, are you comfortable? Yep. Okay, so the assumption is we'll stay with the comfort for now, but don't ignore that, obviously, because if someone's not comfortable, give up there, because they're going to learn more about discomfort, and that's not what we're about. So to recap, you used this very informative part of your fingertips to feel along the length of the spine, and you're feeling like pushing gently in and pushing gently across and getting a sense of, you know, how much activity is in the muscle, and that you can compare, say, here with here or here with here, and you worked all the way along. And then the other side, so you can compare here to here. Now, generally speaking, if someone's head's turned that way, their spine is going to may make a C curve this way. That would be what you would expect. But some people won't, because they've actually got a structural C curve to the other way, for example. So this might just straighten them out. So don't make assumptions, but you would assume, you could assume, and then be very willing to be proven wrong, that his spine is going to do that a little bit. And if that's the case, then the muscles on this side are going to be relatively lengthened and this side relatively shortened, because that's the bow of the curve, right? Normally if our spine's like that and it curves like that, then these muscles are put in a position where they are slightly shorter and these ones are slightly longer. So there'll be a structural reason why the inside muscles will feel different to the outside muscles. Yes, so these might feel more bunchy. These might feel more taut, not because they're working, just because they're stretched. Lengthened. Is that clear?
So when you say inside, you're talking about the inside?
Inside of the curve. Yep, inside of the curve. I grab a stool. Okay.
Is that because his
Head's turned that way. Now, if he had a structural scoliosis that went the other way, then of course just turning his head's not going to correct that necessarily. Or he might have so much mobility in his neck that all of the turning happens in his neck and nothing happens down here. Nothing, you know, it could just be still very straight. But the fact that this shoulder's up would tend to think that is, and there's things we can do to feel for that. But let's just stay with the muscle tonus there for the starters. So we looked at comfort, we looked at the muscle tonus along the length of the spine, bless you, And then with Fran, you looked at the availability of the leg to lift. So you took the weight of the leg, felt the weight of the leg, lifted it up. Let's say you did this, I can't remember. And then you found a way where you felt like you had the leg. So you lift it up high enough that when you turn it, you can feel it engaging in the hip joint. So if down here, when I turn it, I actually turn it, and a lot just happens in the knee. Can you see the difference? So I haven't engaged that, that kind of crank up there enough so that now he can clearly feel, I mean, I'm still losing a little bit in the knee joint, but it's in the hip joint. Okay. And then this side. So now I automatically already pulled him into external rotation because that was a bit naughty without lifting. To see where I can really feel. So here it's much lower that I go right into his hip joint. Can you see the difference? And that the pelvis moves much quicker on this side than this side. Now, here, I was reading this morning, Feldenkrais was having a rant, and he talked about the difference between introspection and self-observation. Because I was using introspection yesterday. He said introspection has this element of judgment in it, so he would prefer self-observation. So I'm observing myself without judgment, like my moves. Am I free to move when I'm moving Glenn? And my observation of Glenn is that also observation and not judgment. So I'm just seeing which way is easier, which way is less available. And you think, you know, you might be having a reaction to my pedantry around language. Bear with it. It gets easier. But if I said to Glenn, now Glenn can take it because he's used to that kind of language, but I said, oh, you feel stiff there, Glenn. What happens in his self-image? I've just reinforced some, a negative in him. Or, my God, look at your duck's bum. Or, you know, gosh, you've got a huge lordosis or something. And I'm just tapping all back into his thing that we talked about yesterday, you know, all his little funny bits in his self-image. And we don't buy into that game. We're neutral. We're Switzerland. With
chocolate?
Yes. And tact.
People want to know, how's my back? What do you say? Just say.
You say, well, you stick with descriptives that aren't judges. And you think, well, so I can say, well, this part of your back works quite hard and this part doesn't work as hard as this part. And can you feel it? So every time they ask for that, I take it back to their experience. So I say, well, this is what I'm feeling. This side maybe is working a little bit harder than this side. Can you feel that? And if they say, nah, you go, okay. And I said, you know, because you're not necessarily right either. Or when you bend this way, I see this side bends a little bit more, this side twists a little bit more. You know, because everything, it's like saying that this is my better hand. This is dexterous. This is the more dexterous hand. But this hand is really good at holding things still. You know what I mean? Like we've all got our specialities. And you think, oh, that's just being a social worker, namby-pamby, there. It's not.
It's actually very accurate.
It's very accurate.
Yeah,
yes.
And you're avoiding the language that slants in any direction.
Yes.
And that's why you see. That's what I like about Feldenkrais.
Yes.
The language doesn't.
It's really, precise.
It's very precise.
This is how it is. This is how it's feeling. This is what I'm sensing. This is what I'm thinking. And as posed in that context, where then they can check with their own experience about whether it matches or not, and it's perfectly fine to not match. You know, because we are two different nervous systems. So it takes a long time for us to get out of that, though, a long time. And so in here we're practicing, and you know, by consenting to be here, you've given me a license to nag you about it. Okay, so here we go. So you can see that there. All right, so that side of his pelvis. Well, his pelvis is moving a little bit, and his right glute is kind of getting a bit, interested for whatever reason. Whereas on this side, now see, because I'm talking, he'll change. He resists change. So now his glute's getting a bit interested on that side in a way that I didn't notice it before. Maybe I'm moving him further or faster. Okay, so, and now at this point, we're not going into hypotheses about why. Like, just give it up for now. Just don't worry about it. Just stay in the observance. Because actually, we're not hypothetical creators, mostly. We come up with questions, but anyway, that's another philosophical story. Just notice that that's how it is. And see, I'm already, you got to be careful. I didn't put him back exactly how he was. And that's a judgment in itself. Right? Like and what I'm telling to his system was, I didn't like your leg being out like that. And I put it back there. So you see how subtle this is? Now, there's other ways that you can check tone in the leg. You can shake. Back where it was. Because I'll put it back where he had it and then see what he does with that. But if I put it somewhere different, he'll feel corrected at some level. Another way that you can kind of assess the overall tone of the hip joint in particular is to just very lightly take the heel and shake it. And you'll see kind of the resonance going up through him or not. And then where there's a period where he's holding a lot, then the force won't travel through it. So that gives you another sense of where there might be more work versus less work. So you're thinking where it's light and easy to move and the force goes straight through, there's less tonus, less work. And so there, because that leg is out so much, I have to do a little bit of work to get him sort of in the mid-range to feel. And you'll often see us coming around shaking halfway, periodically through lessons because we're just checking in to feel what's happening with the overall sort of tonus as well. That's what we're doing. Okay? Sorry? In FI. I shake you verbally in ATM. You mean I haven't rocked your world in ATM?
She said walking around. Yeah. And it's like those words.
Oh. Oh, beg your pardon. Yes, yes.
It's all right. So she
yes.
the jump.
So, I often, because we walk around and around tables, so we go round and round and round and tie a stool and boom, boom, boom. All right. So, that's a little, yes.
You're moving it forward and you're doing it slowly and you're not getting response.
You can do it quick. When you do something fast, he can't help me and he can hinder me, but he can't help me. It's too fast. So, when you pick up somebody's leg, and you'll feel this. You all right there, Glenn? You need to move? You pick up their leg, and their leg feels super, super light. And you go to move it, and they do it all for you. So that's where they can't stop helping you. I call them mother's little helpers. They just can't stop it. They've been trained to be good children and to help, or they're control freaks. It's usually the same thing. So now Glenn is really good at letting, I've got his weight. He's let his leg go sufficiently that I can move it and feel what the background tonus is. But Glenn's not normal. Like, it's not normal to let your leg go like that. None of you are normal. You haven't got a lordosis and you're not stiff. If I use descriptors like that, it's because you don't have it. I'm safe to say it. And it's just, this is not a funny story. This is a tangent. The Australian sense of humour is pretty weird, and we just dish people with the opposites. And I was teaching in Bhutan, and we had this beautiful young man as a guide, and I was teasing him and saying, "Oh, well, what would you know? You're so fat," or something like this, or whatever, because he wasn't. And he'd go, "Why?" He'd sort of look at me, and I'd say, "Look, you have to understand, Australia. If I say that you're this, it's because you're not. Like, I can say it, and I can tease you. So if I say, oh, you're so dumb, you're not. It means you're actually really smart." So one day I thanked him and said, "Oh, you're so attentive," because he was. Because I meant it. Like he would always second guess what we needed, and he was just brilliant. And he went, "Oh, does that mean I'm really like ignorant then?" And then he burst out laughing because he got me. You see, anyway. There's a story about. So if I said you were stiff and lordotic, it's because you're not stiff and you're not lordotic. All right. So getting back to this, if somebody's helping you, you'll feel, that's what you'll feel. You'll feel this assistance, and their leg will feel not light, like it's well organised, but you won't have its weight. Do you know what I'm talking about? And you can feel that. You feel it on each other when you just do this very gentle thing of lifting their foot up and finding where you can engage the best with the hip joint. Now, what do you do when somebody's not allowing you to move them? They're not willfully resisting you, they're trying to assist you, but it feels like resistance. So sometimes shaking because they can't help you, they can't time it quickly enough. Or you can say, I'd usually joke with them and say, mother's little helper, or I say something really rude like, you know, I'll still charge you the same whether you do the work or not. Like, you might as well let me do the work because you're paying me. Something, like I can get away with that because my humour's so bad and people know me, but you just have your little thing. Or sometimes if you just jiggle it and they go, oh, yeah, sorry, I'm helping you. Do you know what I mean with this experience? Yes. Yes, giving up. Yeah, well, they have to really trust you.
Otherwise, you might hurt me.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible for that. So I'll only do it in as much as that. If you've got you, then I can trust you. If you haven't got you and you're thinking of what to do, you're not really present. You're not having.
But often it's not about me.
Yeah. So sometimes it is about you, not you personally, but sometimes it is. So you have a little checklist. You go through and go, okay, am I organised enough that they know that I can deal with their weight? Because especially like a bloke will think, oh, you know, she's little, she can't handle my huge leg. You haven't got a huge leg. He has got a huge leg. But, so I would stop and I would readjust myself. Am I well organised enough that I can pick up his leg in a way that he feels like he can really, that actually his leg is lighter for me now because I'm better organised, right? And he might feel that or not. So you always go, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? And you adjust yourself and you think, trust me, in a way, and then you do that little, and sometimes just by doing little movements, they'll start to feel, and you'll say, you point out to them saying, now here's where you're helping me. Can you feel that? So you give them responsibility for it without making them feel bad, because they'll feel bad. They go, I'm sorry, I can't relax. You go, that's fine. That's what you're here for. You know, that's what you're here to learn. Sometimes just dropping them a little bit like that will remind them. And some people just can't. This one woman I've been working with for years, she comes to see me once a month. She has got no idea when she's holding, and that's part of her neurology. You know, she just doesn't know. She knows when she gets up off the table that she feels heaps better. But when sometimes I point out to her and I'm just point out her shoulder, it does not move forward and backward. And I'll do a little shake and I'll do a little thing and then I'll work somewhere else and come back and then she'll feel it. But she'll go, oh, and it's not got a lot better for her because a little bit with her, but her not, because I have very complicated situations. And she's got a real mindset that repetitive movement poops her out. She hasn't got chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or anything, but there's this thing that she cannot do things repeatedly, and she probably can't. But it's an idea in her head as well as a physical thing. So I can't get her to do anything like that at all, nothing repetitive. But other people you could, or you can get them to give them something to do, like monitor their breathing. So just keep breathing. And that, for her, that's the big thing, because she doesn't equate that with something repetitive, even though it's the most repetitive thing in the world, right? And I give her something to do, like I said, put your hand on your tummy and breathe. So she's learnt to breathe into her hands, right, wherever her. So we use that a lot, yeah. So you'll get your little patter to remind people, but actually sometimes that's the lesson. Now, the other thing to say is if someone's never had a lesson and they come in and they just go, and you can do anything with them, I'd be worried. You know, if they've never had a lesson and they just give over like that, like with no boundaries, that's weird. You know, you'd go, that's really weird. Like, you shouldn't trust me that quickly. You know, like, do you know what I mean? So when I say you guys aren't normal, you guys know how to do that because you trust each other collectively, and that's fine. So that's why you're not normal, and it's a good not normal, because you know how to let go up to a point. But even you guys will still have bits that you don't want to move just yet. You don't want it to be moved just yet. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really frustrating. Someone just won't.
Yeah.
And you would like them to. Then you do the focus on the breathing.
Yeah.
But it'll only let you go sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just curious why you should be cautious if they do just fully give in to you.
If it's only happened to me, I can only think about 2 people in my whole career who did that, because they weren't discerning. You know, like if they're totally addicted to body work and they're used to just lying like that, then that's fine. They've learned to do it. But there was these 2 people who weren't. So they were very low toned in that way and just too trusting. You know, a bit like I don't work with children with autism that much, but I remember when my son was little at school, there's this little boy who was on the spectrum, and he would just come up, and if you were sitting down, he wouldn't know you from Adam. He would come up and climb into your lap. And you go, that's weird, right? There's no discernment. He's not discriminating. He's not saying, I need to suss out the situation first. I need to see if I can trust you first. That's normal. Not to the point of, that's not normal, but do anything, lie on your back with your legs out, do that to me, I don't even know you. That's not normal, in my opinion. I could be wrong. It's just a little bit. No boundaries. No boundaries. And we need boundaries. You know, I don't know, you might all be aging hippies and you think, yeah, no boundaries. I'm an aging hippie and I think, yeah, boundaries.
But you say you have very low, like you speak about being quite low.
I'm quite low toned, yeah.
But that's different. Like you would still have boundaries on a table.
Yeah, if you move me, you'll still feel some resistance. You'll still feel where I'm going, I'm not quite sure about that movement. Yeah. But I've learned to let go. So actually you can move me pretty easily. But then I've had thousands of FIs. I've had you guys working on me for a long time. Has that started? No, that hasn't started yet. When does that start? Year 3. You start working on us. I know. No, it's not. It's fine. It's very good. We all learn a lot. Okay, so sorry, getting back to this. All right, so it's not. It's really very, it's one of the most useful things that we do with you in here. I actually give them boundaries, and I work on their skeleton, and I actually find the middle for them everywhere, if you really want to know, and start getting them to be a bit, helping them, start getting them, that's terrible language, because it's like I'm doing to them. I help them find where enough's enough by making them make decisions about which feels easier and then staying in those. So they have to start making discernments, distinctions. Otherwise, they're just all over the shop. All right, so you've just got this information, right? And your brain is going to want to try and make sense of it and make a pattern and make a diagnosis. Resist all of that. Let that go. And you're going to come up this way, and you've done a lot of exploring around the shoulder girdle, right? Yes? And you know the scapula, and so you can just revise that a little bit. And I think in supine you've lifted the shoulder, one shoulder lifted the other when people are lying on their backs, and felt which one lifts higher. So we're going to do that on the front. So there's it will be different on everybody, because see, Glenn, this shoulder's already lifted, right? So how I lift this shoulder will be a little bit different to this one. So I can come in underneath like this, and for Glenn, because he's got quite a gap there, because he's organised himself really well to keep his snout free with his shoulder back. So I've actually got, for him, I've got my whole fist, like that height, that's the gap. Other people might only have, a finger gap. So this is where you're going to have to be discerning. So I'm going to get my whole fist in there and just lift. So I'm actually on that pec pectoral kind of region, just inland of the front point of the shoulder. So I'm actually on the very end of the chest wall. So I'm lifting the whole shoulder girdle, right? Yeah, a bit further towards the point there. Yeah, you'll feel a nice little gap there, little Feldenkrais gap. And slowly, slowly, I'm just lifting. And my intention is to lift up, but of course he's not going to lift straight up. He'll lift up and around. So I have to follow that. And I can just hold it there for a bit, or I can lift and lower a few times. And see if the weight on my hand changes. So if someone's helping you, you can also outweight them, you know, because they'll get bored. And you have to have your boredom threshold a bit higher. So you just outweigh, and they get bored and they let go. And then, and Ben's not helping me. So lazy, he's not helping me at all. No. And then, now with these sort of lifting things, especially prone, what is so useful for people is to slowly lower. They'll learn so much. Slowly lower, you know that. And then I'll take my fist out. So you can do that a couple of times. Now, actually, I don't really want Glenn's shoulder to drop too much in this position because he's got it high for a really good reason. But that might just be useful for him to feel that movement of the shoulder blade on the chest wall lifting. Now, if I lift up this shoulder, obviously it's going to be heavy because his head's turned to the left, right? So I might still give it a crack. So but it's really heavy, so I have to lift it to get my hand under. Pardon? Did I need to move my body? Did I move my body? Then I didn't need to move my body. Comfortable. I could stay here all day. Yep. Because I'm leaning. My middle name is Eileen. It's not, but no, I'm really comfortable. You come and feel anywhere. I'm leaning on my elbow. And I'm bending in my hips, and my back is free, my pelvis is free, I can lift, my head is free, my breathing is free. Yeah? So, I mean, I don't like turning my head that way because I'm looking at you, but I'm organised for his shoulder and I'm organised for all of him, and you can hear that my breathing is fine. So my hand is there. So I don't want to lift up too high here. I'm just going to push the back of my wrist in and just pick up that round bit of his shoulder and just hold it a tiny, tiny bit. And I'm watching his breathing. And I'm feeling what's happening in my hand. And then this tiny, tiny movement, I can lower it down. Take my hand out. And let him have a little contemplation of that.
Would it be useful to map the scapula or the back?
Yes, you could do it. Yep. So you probably notice, because I went straight into doing mode, when I did this, first up I actually had my hand here because I was going to start helping, but that's extra information. I wanted to keep it really clean and just get him to feel himself first. Now, the next time you did it, so now I'm seeing here, the next time you did it, you could clarify that, or you could clarify what you clarified before, the muscles in the gutter of the spine, and how they might change with that. Or you could clarify anything that you liked. I might, yeah. If I felt that if he was really helping me, that's when I'd say, can you feel yourself helping me? Or something like that. Or I wouldn't, in this instance, I could say, I wouldn't necessarily say compare when I lift your left shoulder, it feels different to the right, because it has to feel different. It just has to. What would be useful is asking him to have both hands up. So bring this hand up around your face. And now his spine is a little bit more symmetrical. And then ask, could you put your head in the middle, which you might not like. So sometimes I have a little towel under their forehead. So pop your forehead on or maybe put one hand on top of the other. So then that's when I'd really like to engage him, so that then I could Now it's too soon. I've launched in and it's like, no, let's have a little bit of social chat first. So that's when I would need to map a little bit and just get him used to this position. And I can just feel around for bits of tonus and whatnot. And then I could come in and say, and so he's got a big gap under his shoulders because he's a big guy. So I'm having to do something quite weird and use my wrist to lift him up and lower. And then I could ask him to compare, find the best spot. So that's when I would ask him to compare.
Are we looking for him to lower the tonus?
You might feel his shoulder getting smoother to move. Really, you're looking for comparisons, left and right, and you're looking for the ease of the movement, the availability of the movement, whether something influences his breathing or not. But let's just say that for the moment, your question is, how easily does one shoulder lift? Yep. Now, if the person's very asymmetric, so he doesn't like his feet being like that because I didn't pay attention to his comfort. So you can do it in the asymmetrical position, but to really compare, you might need to get them symmetrical, which means you have to pay attention to all of that. Okay? Is that enough?
Can I just ask?
Yes.
Susan, when you were lifting on the other side where there was not much room, or
Yep.
if it is just a flat
Yep.
hand, are you using the tips of your fingers to lift up or all of your hand?
So I did 3 different things because of the 3 different gaps. The first gap, I just had this and I just lifted with this. You've done that movement, right? And you do it, you actually lever a little bit off your elbow and my pelvis was free to help, right? So that was the first lift. That lift, I actually lifted by, hang on, how did I do it? Can you go back? I've forgotten. I actually lifted his shoulder because his shoulder's heavy on the table. And I did that. I pushed, instead of thinking of lifting my fingers, I think of pushing my wrist back. And you felt the difference between pushing and lifting, right? And I'm much stronger at pushing in than I am at lifting my fingers. I'm using the push into the table to angle my fingers up, right? So Glenn can feel the difference. That's me lifting my fingers. That's me pushing into the table. Feel the difference? Right, there's a qualitative difference for him. It's easier for me. So I'm paying attention to my ease, big time there. And then when he had the huge gap with his both shoulders up, he's so well trained. Thank you. Now his shoulders have come down a bit. But there, I actually, my fist isn't high enough. So I actually had to use this, and I had to make a tabletop, in fact, a bell of my hand. And I used this part to lift up, okay? Because I needed that much height. So there's 3 options. Don't stop. There's even more. Because everybody's different. Yeah, so it's a good question. But they're always good questions. But you can. I tell you what, where it's easier to lift by. No, I won't. I'll do that. It's another time. It's always we always go crazy. You notice when we do demonstrations, we go, oh, well, then we could do this, and then we could do this, because we start getting curious. And one thing's.
If you had me lie on my face, both my shoulders up, my nose would get a bit squashed.
Maybe. It's a possibility. You might not. You might love it. Yeah. You see, you can feel when people don't like it. Once you get settled in yourself and you can distinguish between your discomfort and their discomfort, you can really start. You have to have a bit of faith about that, and attention, not paranoia. Attention. Yeah, because you'll watch their breathing. They will hold themselves, or.
And if it was a man doing what you were doing,
Yeah. Yes.
how would you place your hands?
I wasn't anywhere near any breast tissue. So even if Glenn had jugs of whatever, like pint jugs, I wasn't near your breast tissue, was I? No, because no, that's right. You don't know. So it's a really, really important question, because sometimes women's breasts can come up a bit high because they're squishy. Yep. But I was right up here.
Would I go for, say, an angle over?
You could go more towards the shoulder, armpit. Yeah. But with that, I was probably never more than sort of there, right on that part of on the edge of the ribs. Is that? Yeah. And okay.
Yep. All good.
Clear? Anything that you wanted to say, Glenn?
No.
Okay.
Are you actually lifting the rib cage?
I was.
Shoulder?
Yeah, I was lifting actually the edge of the rib cage, which means that I was carrying that. But, well, this is where it's tricky. I was actually on both. So if I was just lifting the rib cage, he would have rolled. But actually, I was on his shoulder because you could see the scapula moving more than the rib cage. So it was both, but more biased towards taking the shoulder around. So you could feel that?
One thing I will say, when you change the hands,
yeah.
I've noticed that with other people working on me, so I'm trying to be a bit more aware of it, is that not only do you need to be comfortable, but you need to make sure like what you're pushing with or what you're holding is
soft.
Yeah, the difference
There's a reason
between
for
your
two
hands on that shoulder when you're demonstrating two lifts.
Yeah.
One was like, okay, I can feel that. The other one was,
yeah.
I prefer you not to do that.
Yeah.
It's not much. Like it didn't hurt or anything.
Yeah.
It's just that one.
It's really, quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys are getting very discerning around quality now. So don't get paranoid with each other, but use each other to say which feels more quality, this or this. And there's a reason for this, is so that your fingers are soft and the lift comes from somewhere else. Because if the fingers come from, you can do little lifts with your fingers, but I mean, what I notice is I have to work hard when I'm not well organised, and there'll be a slight shake. I get a slight fatigue shake because I'm using little muscles that fatigue almost instantly because they're not designed for lifting. And I have the shakes anyway because I do. I was doing advanced training in Perth one time. I was a student, not one of Larry's, and this woman took great delight in telling me, the trainer, "You're efforting, I can feel you shaking." It's like, I've got a tremor. Anyway, that's another story. We all have our little defensive mechanisms, don't we, that we don't like being pointed at. And it made me realise, oh yeah, still not that good at receiving feedback. little, just to make you feel better about sometimes you just don't feel like feedback. Just felt like saying, can you just not give me feedback? It was uninvited feedback anyway. I'm still defensive 3 years later. Still. All right. Good story. We've all got a little perfect script in there somewhere.
From the shoulder, like
yeah.
And after you've done that for a couple of goes, would you then move to the shoulder girdle?
Yes, you could. So these are all fantastic extensions where you could differentiate just the taking the humeral joint out a little bit more, or getting more. You could get onto the collarbone, you could get onto the ribs, you could encourage the scapula from the back. They're all beautiful, clarifying things to do. And if I talk you through them, I'll lose half the room because they'll start going, can't do it. So we're just going to lift whatever you think of as the shoulder and see how you go. And if you want to explore more, go for it.
So it's on the stomach.
Yep.
Check the comfort.
Yep.
Make sure you're there.
Yep.
Review the back.
Just do that little bit with the legs, just to simplify what you did last week to something really simple, a simple question. Which leg is connecting in which direction? It is crucial. You have to know where you are. You have to know which one you're moving, and then you explore from there. You just... I don't want to put a just in there because I'm diminishing it again. Try different positions for your hand to see what the influence is.
Is there any difference between going from the inside out?
Not in my, no, you can, no rules like that. Where your attention, where you think they might feel the most is probably a good place to start.
Is there anything you could say to say, Glenn, like when you're doing an FI, when you're doing an FI, before you start, like, now just be aware of where I put my hands. So he brings his attention all to that part of the body.
Sometimes we say it explicitly and we'll say, feel this, feel where my hand is. And especially when I'm using my hands for kind of eliminating breathing or lack of breathing in a spot, I'll say that. Sometimes we just want to shut up and let them zone out. And you'll see the difference. So sometimes we'll have quite chatty FIs where we're talking a lot because we know that they're going to drift off and start doing shopping lists and we want them to pay attention. Other times I won't say a word almost except roll over because they're in a zone and I want them to stay there, or I'm in a zone and I want to stay there. It's about me as well. And then sometimes they'll be a little bit in between. And you will have a style, and I would encourage you to play with all of those options eventually. Yeah. I remember one person in the Adelaide training who just could not shut up because this person was very curious and he or she noticed a lot and he or she felt compelled to say everything that he was noticing to the person on the table. And this person still does it and has been practicing for a long time and can't work out why people don't come back. And it's tragic. It's really tragic because this person's never been able to hear that feedback.
What about if the person won't shut up?
This person on the table, yeah, then you go, yeah, oh, good, yeah.
My teacher always puts a sock in my mouth really fast. Sock in the mouth, and that's why I go to this. Shut me up.
But sometimes you just let them rip, and they eventually, if it's what's really interesting is when their nervous system settles, all that energetic conversational stuff starts to settle as well, and you actually start getting a skill about doing that without having to say anything. It's really interesting.
Someone to Margaret came last or the other week, and I swear this person never shut up from the time he walked in the door, and talked not about what it was hurting him or just wouldn't shit.
Yeah. So sometimes you let them run because that's their tonus, right? You know. Yeah. And then sometimes you'll just say, okay, I'll just pause you there for a minute. Could you notice this versus this? You know, I'll just pause you there and notice this versus this.
I think some people are uncomfortable also with
it's their default. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Because people can feel very vulnerable lying down. You know, and we can talk more about some people. Prone is actually a really good place to put people who are like that because it's hard to talk when you're lying down, and they often don't feel as vulnerable. Like lying on your back with your belly exposed, people can. Now, having said that, there are some people who feel very vulnerable lying face down because their bum's exposed or whatever. I don't know, whatever reason. So if you ask them what they're comfortable, how they sleep, because they'll tell you because people usually don't go to sleep in their most vulnerable position. But prone is one of the things it affords us is it's harder to talk when you're face down. Yeah. But
in that instance, if someone who's got that sort of high tonus vocalization,
yes.
I guess it's to be just as important for us to be as non-judgmental
exactly.
about that
Exactly.
as the actual body itself.
Yeah.
It's just another
That's right.
It's another aspect of tonus.
It is. It's just another manifestation of their nervous system that we're interested in. Like you get interested in it. Why does that person need to keep talking? And you kind of play with that about what rhythm do I work with? Oh, when I work like this, they talk even faster. You know, maybe it's not always cause and effect, but you're absolutely right. And when I was a bit judgmental about the person who just comes on the table that do to me, that was judgmental in the way that I talked about it. But later on, like in the 4th year, we'll start talking about these kind of yellow flags, the things where you go, this is maybe something I need to, I'm not going to, you know, get them sectioned straight away, but I just might need to be a little bit careful, or I might need to refer them on. You know, and it could be that there's something neurological happening, or, you know, some really nasty pain that you need to differentiate from just the normal pains. So we'll talk about that in the 4th year. Yes.
I'll ask the question then.
Yeah, ask the questions then. There'll be heaps of questions, because we have to know our boundaries as practitioners as well, right? We're not curative. We don't heal everything. You might be a healer naturally, but that's not what we're teaching in here. And we need to know when somebody needs to be referred to see a neurologist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a social worker or a whatever, right? You need to know that. You need to, need to go and see whatever. Okay. A marriage guidance counsellor. Yeah.
Amanda.
Often getting people to focus on their breathing can help them to quieten down as well.
Yes.
But would you see that as a distracting thing whilst you're working on them? Or
not necessarily, no, because they'll start getting interested, and then they can divide their attention. Yeah. Now, you guys, you're all going through a funny stage where you now know that we watch your breathing, so you're really often very self-conscious of your breathing when we're giving you an FI. So I haven't had anyone in this room so far, but sometimes I'm giving a lesson here, and the breathing is like so outrageously huge. I'm like, oh my, we've created monsters. So that's okay. I'll just put you into a pretzel position where you can't breathe deeply, and then I'll keep going. So, yeah, you don't want them to be self-conscious about it. And so if they are, and you're starting to get this outrageously, big sighing breaths all the time, like we're looking for those big breaths because it tells us a lot. But if it's happening all the time and you're just going, then you'll say, now I'm turning your foot in and out. Could you pay attention to when I go in and out, and give their little monkey mind something else to do. Yeah. Another little job. If it wants a job, we'll give it another little job somewhere else. Yeah. All right, go forth and lift shoulders. So just revise just that simple question of turning the hip so that you're feeling the tonus in the hip joint left and right. How you engage with the hip joint actually by lifting the foot higher or lower. Thank you very much, Glenn. Perfect specimen.